Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, dozens of Israelis are injured in at least 3 terror attacks over the last 12 hours.
We'll reveal what caused a Turkish plane to crash and split into 3, leaving 179 people wounded, Israelis included.
And is it just plain rude, or is that chutzpa that you're witnessing? Well, we'll break down the Israeli term that may explain why you think the average Israeli is so aggressive. Well, terror is again rocking the heart of the nation. 3 terror attacks have been carried out across Jerusalem and the West Bank in the last 12 hours alone, leaving dozens injured. Now, most recently, an Israeli has been injured in a West Bank shooting attack near the Dolev settlement in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. And the Magen David Adom ambulance service says the victim is fully conscious with a light injury. The terror incident was apparently a drive-by shooting, and the assailant has fled the scene.
This comes less than 2 hours after yet another shooting, this time in Jerusalem's Old City. An Israeli police officer was injured after being shot at by an Arab Israeli resident of Haifa, and that shooter has later been identified as a man in his 40s who was recently converted from Christianity to Islam.
Meanwhile, 14 people, including 12 soldiers, have also been wounded in Jerusalem in a suspected car ramming attack this morning. Police and medics say that 2 of the victims have been injured seriously.
כוחות משטרה שהגיעו למקום ביצעו סקירה של הזירה. אכן במקום נראו מספר צעירים שמקבלים טיפול ראשוני על ידי מד"א. כוחות משטרה ביצעו מרדף אחר הרכב שכרגע אנחנו במצוד אחר הרכב כדי לנסות לאתר אותו.
The incident is reported to have occurred just shortly before 2 in the morning, and the suspect drove into the Israeli crowd as they were standing on the sidewalk next to the first station, an entertainment hub in the capital. But in seconds, the driver both hit his alleged targets and was off, fleeing the scene. And while the suspect's car has since been found outside of Bethlehem, the suspect, him or herself, is still at large. Now, this incident also follows dozens of other clashes across Gaza and Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, that have increased in severity in the wake of the United States peace plan. The Hamas terror group in Gaza, for one, has been calling on all Palestinians to step up their confrontations against Israel, and many have answered the call, throwing stones, Molotov cocktails, and more all over the region.
In related news, Palestinian violence hasn't only been shaking the capital. As we've discussed, it's also been spreading wildly across the West Bank and Gaza, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is now threatening severe action.
Starting in Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, 17-year-old Palestinian Mohammed al-Haddad has reportedly been killed by a shot to the heart in Hebron. He was taking part in violent riots in response to the United States' peace plan. Then in Jenin, more clashes broke out as soldiers were demolishing the home of terrorist Ahmed Kunba. Kunba assisted in the attack that killed Rabbi Raziel Shevach in 2018, and his home was originally demolished that same year, but it's since been rebuilt. Still at the demolition site, Palestinians opened fire upon and threw explosives at Israeli troops, who responded with force, killing 1 Palestinian police cadet and injuring another. But it's not yet clear if they were participating in the riots or just hit at the crossfire. The IDF, however, says that they were fired upon first, firing back in response. Now, as for Gaza, 2 mortars have just been fired into Israel overnight, and the IDF hit multiple Hamas targets in return. But at least 13 rockets and mortars and dozens of explosive balloons have been launched into Israel from Gaza every day for the past week, and several Israelis are injured. One victim includes a 3-week-old infant who was seriously hurt when dropped by her mother as they were running to safety. Then in another incident, kindergarten staff in southern Israel can be seen desperately hurrying their crying kids to the shelter away from an explosive balloon that floated towards their play area. Well, IDF spokesperson Hidai Zilberman says that the IDF will not allow this situation to continue. And then, similar to his threats in September, Prime Minister Netanyahu says that if necessary, a large military operation in Gaza could come about before elections.
Well, joining us now to discuss this wave of terror is Mark Shulman, columnist for Newsweek and editor of HistoryCentral.com. So, what would you say that this wave of violence is attributed to?
Okay, so first, we don't know whether it's lone wolf terrorism, which it's most likely, or it's organized in any fashion. There's no question it's in some way reaction to the Trump peace plan, the feeling that we have nothing to lose, a certain amount of anger in the sense that what are we going to do now? And of course, the Palestinians always turn to violence when that happens. I mean, look back to the failed Camp David Accord, and what happened then? We had the Second Intifada. So we're not at that point, obviously, because the Second Intifada was actually directed by the Palestinian Authority. But we do have this pent-up anger that exists certainly amongst a lot of the youth, and this is what we're seeing.
So you're essentially saying that this is a reaction to the release of the U.S. Mideast peace deal?
Look, it doesn't require the peace deal for some people to engage in terror. Let's understand that there was terror before and there'll be terror afterwards. I think the rise is probably partially or totally a result of the peace deal that was announced, and the sense, of course, that the Palestinian Authority announced the reaction to it as a day of rage. Now, they didn't succeed in the day of rage, but they managed to instill rage, I'm sure, in some young people.
And you know what I can't stop thinking about is the fact, or the question as to whether or not security ties are going to continue between the Palestinian Authority and Israel, because it's been a bit unclear. They seem to be intact, but there have been threats that that's not going to be the case.
Okay, look, the biggest importance to the Palestinians of those ties is the ability to keep Hamas from taking over the West Bank. So the Palestinian Authority doesn't want that any more than we do.
Right.
So I'm quite sure that on the lower level, or a higher level, however you want to define it, there is security ties still going on all the time. The reality is, look, we are in those cities at the moment. They may not officially be there, but our undercover agents and everything else are there, and they're following what's going on. And I'm quite sure this security arrangements are continuing between the two sides. Will they get worse? Of course. And can we always trust any given Palestinian policeman or anybody else to turn their gun on us? That's always the fear that we have constantly.
Right. All right, well, I guess my final question is, why do you think the Palestinians who are raging, so to speak, take off so easily when there's really very little chance that this United States deal is even going to be accepted?
Because it's the anger, I guess, more than anything else. Look, one of the biggest problems with the deal, when you look at it, is the fact that no concern was given to the honor of the Palestinians. Now, you and I may not take the honor all that seriously, but the Palestinians take that honor very, very seriously. And their honor is being taken away from them by this Trump plan, by saying, we're going to decide what you're going to do, you're going to accept this. And I think that creates a certain amount of rage and a certain amount of helplessness. And when you feel helpless, how do you take it out in ways that make no sense? But, an act of terror is one way to get your rage out.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Mark, with this update. All right, moving on, the third ever impeachment trial in United States history is over. The result, President Donald Trump will remain in office. It's a trial that has completely divided the country, but falling far short of the two-thirds majority needed to pass the motion, United States President Donald Trump has been acquitted of all the articles of impeachment. The Senate voted 52-48 and 53-47 for acquittal over abuse of power and obstruction of investigation. And now, with the impeachment proceedings behind him, Trump can focus on the campaign trail. And now, with the impeachment proceedings behind him, Trump can finally focus on the campaign trail ahead of the 2020 presidential elections. As for how Israel is responding to the news, well, Israeli leadership is quick to weigh in on President Trump's actions in the Middle East. But as a matter of policy, they've avoided the impeachment proceedings so as not to cause unnecessary conflict between Jerusalem and Washington, especially ahead of elections in which the new president is yet to be determined. Now, for more on U.S. President Trump's acquittal from impeachment, via Skype, we have the Council of Republicans Overseas Israel, Abe Katzman. So, Abe, what are your initial reactions to the impeachment trial?
Well, I suppose I have a few. First, I think that this did not do any harm whatsoever to the president, and I think that it did substantial harm to the Democrats. I think that they have pushed this and pushed this and pushed this beyond any kind of point of reason. And I think it's reflected, you saw the president in the State of the Union address, he didn't even feel he had to mention it. He is coming across as the statesman and coming across as somebody persecuted by his opposition. And you have on the other side somebody like, Nancy Pelosi tearing up his speech behind him. Doesn't look good for the Democrats.
What does this really mean for the future of Israel's elections? Might this have any sort of effect here?
Well, I'm not sure that this in itself is going to have much of an effect. The only thing I could suggest is that in this case, an awful lot of what was presented, whether in the Mueller investigation or in this Ukraine episode, there seemed to be a lot of stuff that was created out of nothing. And it may be that if the same attitude, if people kind of look at the Netanyahu accusations, the Netanyahu indictments the same way, maybe it'll work out the same. I don't think they're identical. I think it remains to be seen, and I don't think we're going to know the answer to that until well after the election.
But do you think that this acquittal will actually have any impact on what Democratic voters think about Trump and about the American presidency right now?
Well, there are not so many people still on the fence about President Trump. There are few more polarizing figures. So it's not like there are that many undecideds out there. On the other hand, there were a number of people in 2016 that could not bring themselves to vote for him. They didn't know what they were getting into, but they saw the world didn't blow up. And in fact, things are actually going pretty well.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Abe. All right, now this is a crazy story. 2 Israelis have just been injured in a plane crash in Istanbul, Turkey. And the details are shocking.
Bir anormallik vardı. En başından beri anormallik vardı. Çok sarsıntılı bir uçuş geçirdik. Sonrasında da yine inişimiz de sert bir şekilde oldu ve normalin üstünde bir hızla iniş yaptık. Her şey normalmiş gibi anons yapıldı. Telefonları açabilirsiniz. İstanbul'a hoş geldiniz anonsları yapıldı. O anonslar yapıldıktan sonra uçak birkaç kere sağa sola doğru yalpaladı ve sekti. Sonrasında o 40 metrelik uçurum gibi yere indik ve 3'e ayrıldı uçak.
What was supposed to be a smooth landing ended in absolute tragedy last night. A Pegasus Airlines low-cost carrier was landing in the middle of a rough patch of weather when it began to skid off the runway at the Istanbul airport on Wednesday, catching fire and then splitting into 3 parts. At least 179 people are wounded and 3 are dead following the accident, and 2 of the injured are Israelis who've been taken to local hospitals in the city. Now, the plane was reportedly affected by strong winds and heavy rain, and it slid about 60 meters before falling down a 30 to 40 meter bank. The damage was so severe that live images broadcast on Turkish television showed several people climbing through a large crack in the severed aircraft and escaping onto one of the wings. The cockpit was even sliced off from the bulk of the plane. Some are still being extracted from the destruction.
Kaza sonrası hastanemize 31 tane yaralı geldi. Bunlardan 24 tanesini taburcu ettik sabah itibariyle. 7 tane hastanemiz serviste yatıyor. Bu hastalardan bir tanesine acilen cerrahi müdahale yaptık. Kalan hastalardan 2 tanesi kulak burun boğaz hastası, diğerleri travmaya bağlı. Ortopedi ve beyin cerrahisi bölümlerinde takip ediliyor.
And the Istanbul public prosecutor has now launched an investigation into the incident. This marks the second time in just 2 years that a Pegasus flight has made a dangerous landing. In January of 2018, a flight slid down an embankment at Sapon Airport in the Black Sea and landed just meters from the water. All 168 people on board were safely evacuated.
All right, now let's change gears for a moment to something a bit happier, right, Aaron?
Bit, yeah.
Now imagine you're in the supermarket and you've got just a handful of items, but you're looking at the checkout lines and you realize that you need to make a decision, suffer the wait or ditch the groceries. Well, Israeli startup Trego is now offering a third option, get rid of the checkout. And here to explain is co-founder, CTO, and vice president of R&D at Trego, Daniel Gabay. All right, so what is Trego? Break this down for us.
Hi, nice to be here. So Trego is a startup company that built a technology for a checkout-free solution in retail. So customer can simply go into a store, take whatever they want, and leave the store without ever having to scan items one by one.
But do they have to interact with a human being in the process of doing this? How can you trust what they're doing?
So we monitor everything. So we put cameras in the ceiling, and we're using AI and computer vision to really know if you took something from the shelf, you looked at it, you put it back, or you did take it and you want to go out from the store.
So even if let's say I pick up, I don't know, dog food, and I decide later I don't want the dog food, and I leave it in the fresh produce aisle. Will it still know that I didn't take the dog food?
Yes, because as a person, you look at the items and you recognize what are the items simply by the color, the texture, and everything.
Right.
And recent revolutions in AI really enables the computer to understand as a human being what you just took.
Wow.
And so it doesn't really depend on the location, but simply on the item itself.
All right, now how did you come up with this? You have just also been, selected as one of the 30 under 30 here in Israel for this revolutionary idea. Tell us about what happened to get you there.
Yeah, so first of all, when we thought about different ideas, we realized that waiting in lines is one of the biggest or the biggest pain point of retail and grocery specifically. And
in any line.
In any line, yeah, of course, people don't like to wait in lines. And as we came from a technology background, we realized that now there is a potential of changing that. So technology is really advancing in the process of being able to help us recognize things and really solving this issue.
Well, especially this issue in Israel is such a pertinent one because Israelis hate lines, so it makes sense that this product came from the land of Israel, right? Okay, so I guess the final question for you is, where is the company headed down the line? Are you going to move into other industries as well, perhaps filming Nancy Pelosi ripping up Trump's speech from different angles, or?
So we're very focused in the retail industry and the retail revolution. So retail is really changing. And one of the aspects is checkout-free solution, and other aspects are really improving the engagement as you're now in store and interacting with you. And so I think we'll stay focused in retail.
All right. Well,
there's a lot to focus on.
There's a lot to focus on.
Daniel, this is amazing, and I can't wait to use it.
Congratulations on this, seriously.
Yes.
All right, now Israel may be a small country, but there are endless ways to explore it. And starting next Tuesday, we're going to be exploring this beautiful nation every week with the series, The Beautiful Face of Israel. Now, our Israeli production partner, YVT, is behind this incredible venture. And joining us now is Koal Goldstein to tell us all about it. So what exactly is YVT?
So YVT is actually, we're promoting tourists contents about the state of Israel.
Right, and you've created over 1,000 videos, I believe, about Israeli tourism. I'm just wondering where you guys are going to get all this content. And you also partner with startups, right?
Yes, we're partnering with startups such as Y Travel and TBF News Magazine.
Right.
That they are kind of creating information for Israeli tourism platforms. So you can go into the platforms and schedule your own trip.
And have all the details like personalized that go for what you're looking for?
It helps you to acknowledge more of the tourism in Israel.
Right.
That you can
to fully take advantage of everything that this country has to offer if you don't necessarily know everything. Now, there's a very special man who is actually the executive producer, the guy who's kind of behind the magic, Inon El Natan. Tell us about him.
Exactly. So he's the executive producer of YVT. He's the one behind all of those magnificent videos. And now he'll also be producing our new series, The Beautiful Face of Israel.
Interesting. And what are we going to see in this series? Tell us about some of the places we're going to be going.
So the series is about all of Israel that has to offer. It's going to be seeing every single week here.
Every Tuesday,
so
just so you guys remember. Yes.
So in the series, we're going to be focusing on every aspect of Israel tourism. From cities that most of you have seen to the cities you haven't.
I think that's one of the big issues is that so many people who come here only know about, the Dead Sea, Jerusalem.
Tel Aviv,
and so you guys kind of want to show us different angles. Are you
different angles on these cities, on different cities that's normally been skipped on.
Right.
Best hotels, most exciting historical sites you can also see there.
Yeah, this is going to be
From
great.
best food, culture activities that you must see.
Well, I think that we're definitely going to be checking this out ourselves to see if there's something we haven't seen.
And Israelis would be wise to watch this too because I understand that this is stuff that even locals don't necessarily know. So it's going to be amazing. I'm excited for it.
I know. Well, we will be seeing you guys next week on Tuesday. Everybody, remember, YVT will be producing the amazing series, Beautiful Faces of Israel, starting next Tuesday, every Tuesday. And if you're lucky, you'll see Koal again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now on a bit more somber note, it's a sad day in Hollywood as one of the biggest on-screen legends ever, Kirk Douglas, has passed away, today at the age of 103. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has more details.
Hey guys, the legendary actor from the golden age of movies, Kirk Douglas, was actually born to Jewish Russian immigrants and ended up being one of the biggest stars in the world for his roles in films like Spartacus, Lust for Life, and dozens of other films. It's truly a sad day today, but considering the legendary actor was 103 years old, it is definitely safe to say He lived a very full and fulfilled life. Douglas's son, also actor Michael Douglas, shared the news through an Instagram post earlier today.
Wow, it really is so crazy to think of all of the movies that he's been in and how he impacted the Hollywood world. I mean, people are devastated about this, even though obviously he made it to 103, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
I think he was in more than 80 films.
Right, 80 films actually, and he worked with some of the greatest directors in the world and in Hollywood specifically, like Billy Wilder, Stanley Kubrick, and so many others. Oddly enough, and honestly pretty sad to think about it, is that Douglas actually never won an Academy Award for an individual film, even though he was nominated for 3 of them.
I didn't know that.
That is a shame, but maybe he'll get, you know, a Lifetime Achievement Award or something. He did also get an honorary Oscar, though, in '96.
Right.
And among some of his many awards, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Film Institute as well.
And we also can't forget that Douglas became one of Hollywood's leading philanthropists as well, with the Douglas Foundation donating millions to a wide range of institutions like the Children's Hospital, for example, in Los Angeles.
And also back in 2015, the foundation itself announced the Kirk Douglas Fellowship, a full tuition 2-year scholarship to the American Film Institute.
Well, we could go on forever with how amazing Kirk Douglas was on and off of the screen. He really impacted so many people throughout the world, so it's truly a sad day to see him go, but thank you for joining us with the update, Emmanuel.
Of course.
All right, don't be surprised now if you hear that the Israeli people don't know how to use the word excuse me, because some people may just call the pushy Israeli attitude rude, but over here it has a word. It's actually called chutzpa.
That's right. If you haven't heard this Hebrew term before, that's okay. The Israeli media outlet Israel 21C has just released a very funny video trying to explain this truly untranslatable word. Take a look.
It's impossible. Most people would give up when they're told something is impossible. But try saying that to an Israeli. What you'll get is chutzpah. What is chutzpah?
Having the willpower to go against the grain.
What is chutzpah?
This character to make sure this happens, and persistence.
What is chutzpah?
Being rude but nice. Chutzpah is stepping out of your comfort zone.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Can I have one?
No, you can't have one.
Oh my God.
Chutzpah is thinking big. Chutzpah is challenging yourself and then challenging the world.
Excuse me, just a question. Just a question. Is the bagel kosher?
Yes.
Yes? So I want a bagel. Have you ever did chutzpah?
All the time. Chutzpah is doing things you never thought you would do, like for me, writing a book. Now, can you actually innovate without chutzpah? I don't think so. If you don't have chutzpah, you just step in the same place and you don't move forward.
So excuse me, sir, I was here before. I'm just asking a question, nothing more. There's no need to shout. There's no need to yell. If you don't like what I say, you can go to chutzpah, chutzpah, chutzpah, chutzpah. Chutzpah, chutzpah, chutzpah.
It takes a lot of chutzpah to do the things that he just did in those videos.
Yeah, but I see people do them all the time here, and they're proud. So I guess it's hard for me to say after seeing that chutzpah and rude do not seem like the same thing.
No,
but they're different people. They're different. Chutzpah is supposed to push you forward.
Tough word. It's a tough word to translate.
You need it to survive here. All right, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Now, we had our fun in the sun over the week, but the rain is back, and so is the chilly weather that comes with the average low tonight of 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. And then over the weekend, you can expect highs of just around 56 or 13 degrees Celsius. Only Eilat in the south is the exception, of course, with partly cloudy skies and a high of about 74 or 23 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what is going viral in Israel on tubing.
You can do it. Come on, Ducks. That's it.
It's all about teamwork. Two together will help you carry this massive stick to who knows where.
It's a good stick.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. I love how every single day we have dog videos on tubing.
It really does seem that way, but
it speaks to what our team loves. Everybody loves watching dogs do things.
Everybody
Let's
loves
be
dogs.
honest.
But on that note, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.44 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchak. Thanks for watching.